on, I got mute.
Hey, man.
There we go.
Hey, man.
Howdy.
Yeah, YouTube has this audio library of safe stuff. It's okay.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff on there, but that's kind of, dumb. Dumb that we have to.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe one day we'll have Azure or something.
Don't say that. You're going to jinx it.
Okay, let's see here. Are you sending video this week?
No, I need to, I guess I'd have to either fix my driver, which I only think about, at
Right, yeah.
9:30 on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Which I have not done, so.
I'm streaming at a lower resolution, so we'll see if that makes a difference with the...
Oh, yeah.
Like we
that'll
talked
be
about
interesting.
last week. We shall see.
Yes,
see if
we
can
shall.
Get Mr. Kane on here.
Hello.
Hi there.
Howdy. This is Hal.
Hi, Hal.
Howdy, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
Pretty decent. Had one of those evenings where just like nothing went right, but now I'm downstairs. I'm not up there, so.
Sounds like some of the days I've had.
Jonathan, is the stream still going? Because it turned into an hourglass for me.
I hope so. Let me see what YouTube says.
Maybe I'll just load it.
Let's see. It says stream status is good.
Okay. Maybe it's me. I don't know, man. So, where are you, Robert? Are you in Birmingham?
I live in Birmingham, but I'm in Jacksonville, Florida right now.
Okay. What you doing down there?
I travel a lot. I work as a consultant for Pragmatic Works, and we've got a big contract going on with a client here that we're wrapping up. So I travel a lot for business.
Do you podcast? That's quite a mic.
I use this. It's a Rode Podcaster. I use it to record my Pluralsight videos.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've done
good.
a bunch of videos, including PowerShell ones for Pluralsight. So they like us to use a good professional quality mic. So
I thought your voice sounded familiar. I bet that's why.
Could be. I have been on many videos for them. I got about, I think, 8 or 9 out there, plus various other venues for speaking and whatnot.
Nice. Yeah, I've done some work for them as well. Very cool guys.
Yeah, they are. Really good operation. And, man, they're just gobbling up everybody. They bought out a whole bunch of their companies in the last year.
Yeah, and then our favorite PowerShell friends, Don Jones and Greg Shields, just went over there full time.
They just went to work for them full time, you said?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Your audio is kind of...
I heard Don was going to do some videos for him, but I didn't know he'd actually gone to work for him full time.
Yeah, I just saw that on Facebook the other day.
Yeah, I don't know what that means for Don, but...
Well, I was reading it further in the thread, and because it was on Greg Shields' Facebook wall, and he was basically saying, hey, pleased to say Don and I are joining Pluralsight as evangelists and authors, and we were like, well, what's happened to Concentrated Technology, their business? So basically, that's going to still be there, but Jason Helmick will be the principal as far as the consulting work that they do through that.
Okay.
So, it all works out. Let's see.
Yeah.
Whose audio is not great, Jonathan?
Roberts keeps breaking up. We may need to reconnect with him. His video looks great,
Okay.
but his audio... Well, actually, his...
I don't see his
It's a
video on the
tad
stream.
laggy.
Did
Okay,
you
well, let me
put it up there?
let me shut down a few things here. This may disconnect me for just a second.
Okay. Yeah, he's live on the stream as far as I can tell.
All I see is your picture, Jonathan. Video.
Are you on the right page? I don't-
I see you, and it's been moving and stuff, and it says it's live.
What's the date say?
There is no date.
Okay, then it's
It says
way
episode
lagged.
281. And it's just you and the logo.
I can restart the stream.
Wonder.
Are we back?
You're back, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I forgot. I use, when I travel, I use a VPN service so that all these icky people in the hotel can't snoop on my internet connection.
Ah,
And,
okay.
But it does slow you down a little bit. I meant to shut it down before I connected. I also seem to have disconnected. Do I need to reconnect the video?
Yeah, if you could turn that back on, that'd be
Okay.
great.
All right. That says current video, but I'm not seeing me on here.
And his audio went down.
Yeah, I saw that,
south.
or heard that. I'm not sure why yet.
We go to tools. Video.
Why?
Well, it says it's using my camera. Can you? But it's not giving me the option to turn video on all of a sudden. Yeah, it's telling me I have a slow connection. Now I connected up via my Wi-Fi adapter because typically it's a little more, I guess, stable than hotel Wi-Fi. But I can try to reconnect to the hotel Wi-Fi and we can see if that's any better.
Okay.
All right, let me try that. Call me back in just a minute.
All right. Let's see if I can. I'm not sure if I can edit the title while I'm streaming. I will try. And let's say 7/31/2014. Save changes. Did the title just change?
I don't know. I see 281 still. Just going to reload just for the heck of it. Oh. Huh. Now I see it. That's really weird. Yeah, it did change, by the way.
Okay.
And I see different graphics, and I see you and him, and so.
All right. So how am I now?
So far, so good.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it like this and see what happens.
Alrighty then. So, what do you think, Jonathan? Are you going to adjust the? Are you going to move his picture around a little bit?
Does it need to be?
No, never mind. It's just it was just lagged again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just taking a while to catch up. Okay, so now I see his face. There we go. And I see the microphone.
Well, good. Hopefully this will keep up.
Okay. Hold on a second. I have to tell Ed. Okay. So I think we are ready to go then. If you are ready to go, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay, cool. Robert, everything good on your side?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just feel bad
Then
you have to look
let's
at my
go.
ugly mug the whole time, but
I'll just kind of put my finger, my hand in front of that part of the monitor.
there you go.
Okay, so everybody in the chat room, thank you for joining us. As you noticed, we are back to Thursday nights. We will do that through the end of the year, and so on and so forth. If you have any questions for the guest, then by all means put a couple of hash marks in the chat room so that we see them, and we will weave that into the conversation. So, okay, tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us, for the first time, Robert Kane. Welcome, Robert.
Your
Are you
audio
there,
cut
Robert?
out for just a minute. Yeah, your audio cut out for
Oh, did
just
it?
a minute. Yeah.
Should I just start
Heard
over?
you say, "Rah,"
Maybe I'll
and
just
then you
start
went
over.
away.
Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us Robert Kane. Welcome to the show, Robert.
You still there?
Yes, can you hear us?
Are you hearing me, Jonathan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Your end or mine. But
Okay.
I've lost your audio.
Okay, let me try doing this. Looks like I'm sending audio, and I'm receiving audio from Skype.
Oh, joy.
Okay, I'm going to call him back. Can you hear us now?
I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. If I do the intro a third time, and if you can't hear me, then I'm going to start to wonder. Okay, no, we'll make it work. It will be awesome.
All right, cool.
No problem. Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us Robert Kane. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Now you're breaking up. How?
What? No.
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
Jonathan just
Okay.
fine.
This
but yeah,
doesn't make
Hal's breaking
sense to me. Okay.
up. That's because it's Skype, you know.
I'm trying to figure out if it's my end, if there's anything I can do. But give me just a moment.
It's
Sure.
the issues are intermittent on your side. Most of the time you sound great.
Website. I just went to the speed test website, and it was just really slow, and it hasn't even come up yet. So now I'm wondering. All right, let me just do a sanity check over here. I will be right back, Jonathan.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
We've had so
Talk amongst yourselves, chat room.
We've had so many problems with Skype the last few weeks. I don't know why.
Yeah, Skype's one of those that it either works really well or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it just seems to come and go.
You'd think we would have figured audio out on the internet by now, but I guess not.
Well, until good, solid wireless connectivity gets everywhere, you know, that's I just think we're going to have bandwidth problems and trying to pipe audio and video. You know, you look at things like Netflix being 30 to 40% of the internet traffic.
Yeah.
In the evenings. It's just, mind-boggling.
I've got Skype to Skype set to premium on my QoS. Let's see if I can... So I know Hal asked you...
You and I seem to be pretty solid.
What's that?
So far we seem to be pretty solid. A little bit of a lag, but not bad.
That's good.
I'm sorry, you said Hal asked me?
Yeah, Hal asked you where you're located, but I didn't hear the answer because I was trying to fix something.
Oh, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida this week.
Oh, okay.
You can see the lovely kitchenette with the candlelit suites behind me.
You brought your gear with you. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of bad about taking way too much stuff with me. I'm sitting here with, let's see, I got a work computer over there, my Surface down here, my work laptop here, my USB monitor here, my regular monitor there, and then my personal laptop over there.
Wow.
So, yeah, I do tend to bring a little bit too much with me, but on this, coming down, I was going to say, coming down here from Birmingham, I can drive.
Oh, yeah, so, that makes all the difference.
Because I drive, yeah, I can just take whatever I want with me. Yeah, flying, I don't take this much stuff.
Yeah, that would be very expensive.
Well, and on my last flight, I had this guy break I had a nice little USB monitor that I used to carry in my backpack, and I made a mistake of putting my. It just gave me an external monitor. My laptop that I use for work's like 1366 by 768. So and it was kind of tiny. So I bought a second monitor. It's a USB monitor, and it doesn't require power. It just uses a USB port. But I stuck it in the overhead bin, and some guy was pulling his luggage out of the overhead and just beating the crap out of everything.
Oh, wow!
Getting it out. Yeah. And so when I didn't realize his was in the same bin as mine. And so, of course, because my connection got missed, I wound up I was actually in Omaha and got there about midnight on Sunday. So it was Monday night before I checked it. And, of course, you plug it in, big old crack.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about my audio, Jonathan?
So far, it's solid.
Okay. I hope that this will remain that way. Let's try again. One more time. Oh, wait, I need to do the show notes real quick. Hold on. Fourth time.
Fourth time's the charm.
That's it exactly.
Yeah, I have one of those. I have an external USB monitor, a Lenovo one. I mean, it's not super high resolution. That's like, 1368 by something, but it's useful.
Well, I ordered the replacement. It's actually, I found a Acer, it's like a 15.6-inch monitor that does 1920 by 1080.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah, and it comes with its own carrying case with a nice thick protective cover, so hopefully I won't have the breakage issue again.
And it's still powered off USB?
Still powered off USB.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy.
It is.
Well, this 22-inch monitor I just showed you a second ago, it's powered off USB.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy also.
Well,
Both of those things are crazy.
At home I can get 5 monitors hooked up to my laptop.
That's cool.
Just because I can.
I just do the 2. 2 is good enough for me. In addition to the LCD panel, the laptop panel.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can probably get by with 2, but
Why? If you can do 5, why limit yourself?
Where do you put 5 monitors, though? I mean, do you have stands and swivels and things like that?
No, just the stands that came with the monitors. I spent actually a lot of time
because I've got a 26-inch widescreen and in the center, and an old this is probably like a 19-inch square ratio monitor on the right, and then I've got my laptop on the left, and there's just not much room for anything else.
Well,
but I have everything pretty close.
Yeah, I've got like 2 tables that all kind of sit in like an L shape, and I'll put 3 big monitors on the main table, and then on the little side table is where I'll have the laptops, and then I've got a 4-port KVM switch for sharing the keyboard and among them. So I'll have like 2 or 3 laptops strung out on this little table, all hooked up to these monitors, and then I'll have my Surface kind of sits right in front of my main monitor. Mm-hmm. So it makes a good little extra computer.
Cool. All right, now we're ready to go.
Awesome.
Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us Robert Kane. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, guys.
So, I'm glad you're here. I know that you are a SQL Server MVP. I was hoping you could tell us about what you do in the community, but before we do that, I know you've was looking at your bio. You've been in software for a long time. So why don't you kind of tell us how you got started?
Well, Sherman set the Wayback Machine in 1977. My dad came home with a TRS-80 Model 1, and the Star Wars had just come out, and he wrote a little program in BASIC that, and of course, this is like 32-column, gray character, no graphics at all, computer, 4K of RAM. And so, the X's were X-wings, and the asterisk was a Death Star, and, Y's were Y-wings, and, and you basically could plot and shoot. It was kind of like a battleship.
Oh, I'm sure it was completely cool at the time.
Yeah. Oh, it was. Of course, I remember having to stick the cassette tape in and load the program off cassette tape.
Probably took 20 minutes.
Yeah. So anyway, I got more interested in trying to figure out how the game worked than in actually playing it. So I started hacking it so that every time I played my sister, I always won.
Nice.
So I took it from there and played on and off with different kinds of computers through the years, and started going to college. And then a buddy of mine calls me up and says, "Hey, summer break, I got a gig, doing custom software. It was to write an inventory system." And to give you an idea, we were using the original scripting language, line numbered BASIC, and we used the BASComp 1.0, Basic Compiler 1.0. And so we took these line numbered BASIC programs and compiled them to create this complete inventory system that you could use to go in and inventory a fairly decent sized store. And my buddy was good at had written this compression engine, so we could take an entire store the size of an average Walmart and store the whole thing on one floppy disk.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's
360K floppy. Yeah, I don't know what he did, but I was in charge of writing all the front ends, the reports, the business logic, and then I passed that off to his storage engine. So anyway, that got me into a life of programming, and I did that for many years, working for a lot of different companies. And then I made the jump over to SQL around 2004. I was basically a victim of my own suggestion.
5 or something?
It was just about to come out with 2005. We actually had, I was working for the power company, and we had kind of a beta, I guess early release. And at the time, we had a problem with Microsoft Access, probably the bane of most database people out there. And they had given an ODBC credential to the various users in the plant and said, here, knock yourself out. Go write your own reports.
Uh-oh.
So nuclear engineers think they know everything about programming and wound up creating literally thousands of access databases. I think between the 3 nuclear power plants we did plus corporate, I think we were close to 11,000 databases.
Wow, this is not
Wow.
going to end well.
No. So
Now,
I'm standing
I mean,
in the
to be
hallway.
fair, were these people getting some productive work done? I mean, it was a mess, but I mean,
Well, to a certain, some
I
of them
appreciated
were.
that tool at the time. You know, before I knew anything about programming myself, you know, before there was, tools for, otherwise, Access was pretty cool.
Well, used responsibly, I agree with you, and I did several access apps. The problem was
That's a good way to put it.
They would use the thing, and then all of a sudden, we in IT would get a phone call. Hey, the so-and-so database is down. We need it fixed. I'm like, what database? We've never heard of this. Well, Joe over in engineering wrote it. Well, call Joe. Well, he's no longer in this department. We need it fixed. And so, anyway, my boss and I are having one of these hallway conversations, and she said, gosh, we really need a reporting program. And I said, well, what you really need is a data warehousing solution. And she said, good, go make it happen. Turned around, walked in our office, and shut the door. And so I kind of did the eyes big as saucers, and
But at least you
sure
knew
enough-
software
sure-
at the time.
Hmm?
You knew software, you knew structure, you knew concepts,
Sure.
right?
yeah,
How
absolutely.
hard could it be?
So I found out that our corporate standard was indeed the new SQL Server 2005, and which so I basically took it, ran with it. They had another consulting firm come in and help us kind of get the thing stood up. I learned a lot and slowly made the transition from software development into data warehousing, business intelligence work, and have been doing that pretty much ever since. Worked for the power company through, I guess, around 2009. Left to do consulting for a couple of years at one firm, and then 2011 came to work for Pragmatic Works.
Cool. So the tools that you're using to get databases done, to work in, is this SQL Studio? I mean, is it or are you still programming and using the databases as the back end?
We're using the SQL Server tools. The tool for pulling data from point A to point B is called SQL Server Integration Services. And it's a tool that lets us, almost like a workflow, we map things out. We put a little component that says, this is a data source, and now we want to transform it, send it today at the spa, massage it, get it to what we want. And then we've got a destination control. And so we can do different things with that. And then we've got another tool called Analysis Services. And Analysis Services is, I like to think of it as a giant calculator. It pre-adds up all this data ahead of time so that when a user goes to run a query, it's already got a lot of numbers added up ahead of time and can just quickly return those results.
Okay.
And then finally, on top of that, we put tools like reporting services, Power View, Excel, various tools to pull data out of these data warehouses and whatnot.
So, how did you get involved in the SQL Server community, and what led to you becoming a Microsoft MVP?
It mostly was just a passion for sharing. At one point, right around the time I started getting into SQL, I was trying to make a decision whether I wanted to stay technical or move into project management. And my boss let me kind of manage a project, after which I said, this is nuts. It's not for me. So I decided to stay, go full bore technical, and basically started finding user groups, jumped into the community, and I've always enjoyed public speaking. I took a speech class in high school, loved it, and I guess maybe I have that genetic defect that I'm not afraid of public speaking. So I started just going to user groups and just sharing things. I started my blog, did a lot of writing. For a while, I'm afraid lately I've kind of neglected my poor blog, but there was a while where I was posting, one blog post every day of the work week. And I guess just over time, I was also became contacted with like the Microsoft developer evangelist at the time. His name was Doug Tenner, and he kind of took me under his wing. And there was two other MVPs in town at the time. One is still one, Todd Miranda, and he, they kind of shepherded me in and put me in, and lo and behold, Robert's an MVP.
So what has that meant for you? I mean, have you you mentioned that you do speak a lot. What kind of opportunities have you done for as far as speaking goes?
I have spoken at a lot of like smaller events like code camps, SQL Saturdays. I enjoy doing user group presentations, and I'm fortunate that a lot of them now are starting to do more and more remote presentations. I think I heard on the last show that the new Omaha PowerShell user group, Don Jones was going to do a remote presentation for him, and I think that's great because it lets a lot of user groups that normally couldn't get speakers. It opens up a whole new, I guess, venue to get speakers to come in and give presentations. So I enjoy doing those where I can.
That's a good point. That we should probably hit on a lot because Jonathan and I like to use the groups too, and like it's hard to do that, to speak to a group that you're not in front of. So
it is challenging.
It takes a little more. You've got to sort of anticipate what questions people might answer. That without that interactivity, it's it's just a little different. So, but it is definitely a good thing that you're doing there to be able to kind of distribute that.
Yeah, I like doing that. I've also spoken at. I also do training classes through my company, and those were called virtual training classes. And with those, it's very much the same format. I sit down in front of the computer, broadcast myself to the audience, 3 to 4 hours a day, giving this training. It's kind of difficult without seeing the people and getting the feedback. We do have a chat room going that they can ask questions and stuff. But it is challenging, but it's also rewarding that I get messages to people that maybe I wouldn't normally
reach. Right. Yeah, it is pretty cool, and I've done the same thing as far as given training courses and attended training courses. So now I know that you're a plural site author as well. You want to tell us what you've been doing with them?
To the universe or not.
I think he may have lost audio. Robert, can you hear us?
Still see connectivity from my end.
He's still going, sounds like. Robert, can you hear us?
I don't think he can. Let's try reconnecting. He's on hotel internet, I assume.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Are you there, Robert?
Yeah, he.
Earth Mars.
Right back. I'm going to call him right back. That fixed it before. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Yeah.
Hey.
Can you hear us now?
Hello there.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I don't know either.
I'm thinking hotel.
Yeah, I was sitting here babbling away, and
yeah, it could be hotel network.
So let's reverse the babble point to a point in time where we knew that we heard you, Jonathan. What?
So you had just started talking how.
Well, shoot. Now you're going to put it back on me.
Well, we had talked about the user groups.
Okay.
And virtual user groups.
Yeah,
and you had just asked about Pluralsight. I think that's where you were going.
Okay, well,
I didn't hear that part. Okay.
So Robert, I know that you are also an author for Pluralsight, which we've talked about a lot on the show. We've done work with them. They've been sponsored a couple of episodes and all that stuff. So good guys. Why don't you tell us what you've done with the company?
For them, I have done quite a few videos, including some introductory PowerShell ones. I did a beginner PowerShell course, so if you're wanting to learn PowerShell, that's a good one. And that was done in the PowerShell 2 days. So even though the IDE was a little different then, all of the techniques are still valid. And then I did an updated course for what's new in PowerShell 3 that showed you the new ISE, talked about some of the new features and commands. And then after that, I did one on using PowerShell with SQL Server. And I talked about how to use both the SQL provider and how to use the SQL SMO, SQL Management Object Libraries. And so give a good understanding of that.
So you've actually been doing PowerShell a little longer than I thought you had. So that's cool. I know that PowerShell was not something that a lot of the SQL people picked up right away, but all of a sudden it did.
Nor
seem
did
like
the SQL team do a spectacular job of supporting SQL with their own little shell. It's just
I forgot about that.
It had some growing pains, definitely. But for me, it harkened back to my programming days, especially back even to the old DOS line number basic days. And I'd actually picked it up just as kind of a mental break. I was doing a lot of studying and learning with SQL Server, constantly trying to pick up new stuff. And I kind of hit a point where I was just kind of sick of looking at SQL Server, to be honest, and just said, I need to do something different for just a little while. And you may have heard this guy named Ted Neward, a fairly famous speaker, and he said, you ought to learn a new language every year just to see how other people do things. And so I thought, well, that's good advice. So off to the bookstore I go. This was pre-Kindle days. And I'm thinking maybe pick up Java or Python or something. And I ran across Ed Wilson's first PowerShell book. And I said, hey, this looks cool because I kind of know .NET already and looks interesting. And so I bought it and, fell in love with PowerShell. And so I've been trying to figure out ways to use PowerShell in association with SQL ever since.
So, do you end up using it in production, to manage SQL? How does that work out?
And I seem to have lost you. Got your audio again.
Okay, I will call you right back.
At least it was at a...
I guess you could just type questions into the chat window, but that would make for an awful boring show, I think.
I didn't even realize he was in the chat room. Who's he logged in as?
I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
Could you turn your video off? Can we try just doing audio and see if that works better?
Yeah, maybe he's getting... Yeah, I think it's like a quality of service thing, and they're throttling or running out of bandwidth or what have you at the hotel.
Could be. All right, well, I got the video off, so...
Okay, we'll see.
Alrighty.
Hopefully you'll be able to continue to hear us. So you had just asked Robert if he was using PowerShell with SQL to manage SQL in production.
Oh yeah. So I'll do that again. Robert, now you've been using PowerShell for a long time. How do you end up using it in production? Do you end up are you managing SQL servers with PowerShell?
No, I'm actually a consultant, so typically I don't do the hands-on day-to-day things. I come in to help start new business intelligence projects and get those up and running off the ground, to train people on how to use the various tools. And so what I use PowerShell for is the world's greatest code generator. For example, I'm working on a module right now that I can point it to a SQL server and have it reverse engineer the databases there. One of the common things you have to do with data warehousing is you'll read data from a source system and then update it some and put it into a data warehouse. Unfortunately, a lot of source systems have no way of doing change detection. And you'd think a simple date of last update flag wouldn't be too much to ask to put on every table, but you'd be shocked at how many systems it's just impossible to do that with. And you can't lock a table for so long that when you're reading 10 million records from a table trying to figure out what's changed, you got to get in and out quickly so as not to bog down the production system. So a common technique is to basically take the source data and make a copy of it in like a staging database, and then you take that to do your massaging with. Well, you can imagine if your source system has thousands of tables, then trying to get that and massage it is going to be pain. So one of the things I've done is created some PowerShell scripts that will take that and reverse engineer it, but also allow me to do things like add additional metadata columns, such as source system, data, we pulled this data, and whatnot. And so that's been a big help having that PowerShell code. And then I've got another set of module that's I'm working with that will take all those tables and create SQL Server Integration Services packages out of them.
So explain to us again what SQL Server Integration Services, what role that fills in with the database.
Its primary role is to, they call it ETL, extract, transform, load. Extract, of course, simply means we take it out of a source system and read those rows in, and then we transform it. We often use a different format for a data warehouse, so we have to rearrange things, maybe look data up so that when we're pulling in say sales records, we actually store the name of the product rather than just a link to some primary key somewhere. So we have to do all these lookups and transformations, and finally when we're done, we write that out to the target database. And that's what SSIS is all about. It gives us all these little controls that we build that look kind of like Lego blocks almost, where you take them and place them on the surface, the screen, and then you basically connect them up in kind of a waterfall type fashion to go, okay, I want this data to go from here to here, and but I want this to do a conditional split so that if you're less than 500, you're going to go here. If you're greater than 500, you're going to go here. The object being you can get them all out into another database. SSIS, though, is also really good at working with more than just databases. I can work with, of course, SQL, Oracle, that kind of thing, but I can also work with text files, flat files, XML, Excel, all these different file formats, and pull all of these in. You can imagine a lot of companies deal with vendors who are FTPing files down, and so they have all these text files of orders and stuff they need to get in. Well, SSIS works really well for that, for reading those text files in and pulling them into the database.
So is this something that runs as a batch, or is it a service that is continually moving this data to different places?
It's mostly a batch mode. You deploy your packages. An individual unit of work in SSIS is called a package. So you deploy these packages to the server, and then you set up a schedule at which you want this package to execute. And then it goes off and does its business, and you can have it run every 5 minutes or once a day or however often you need it to run. And they're just scheduled with SQL Server job agents. Okay,
now I see. So maybe you had a flat file that needs to be grabbed from a. Actually, I think I've got an actual example from a company I used to work at. They had a service where they would grab like address information and zip codes and stuff like that. They would download it from this website periodically, and then they needed to have it basically be inserted into a database table so that the internal web service could then use it. So is that the type of activity that SSIS can be used for?
Absolutely. At one time, when you needed to do something like that, you had to write, a .NET app or something like that. And so now with SSIS, it's very declarative, so you can quickly assemble something in a matter of minutes. I can have the thing done before a .NET developer has even created this new project.
Gotcha. All right, yeah, that's pretty cool. So rattle off some of the types. You said that it did flat files and it does databases. What are some of the other types of data that it's good for handling?
Well, pretty much anything that has an ODBC or OLADB connection, it can talk to. It has built-in support for Oracle, Olay, was it Informix, all these different type of databases, and then all the standard file format types, comma separated value, custom delimited. You get some people who use like a pipe delimited. Some people I've even seen use colons or carrés or all kinds of crazy characters, and it'll read all of those in. It can read fixed length files. It can read variable length files. It pretty much, if it exists, it can do it. I've even written something that will pull data out of MongoDB and pull that in through SSIS. I've got an example.
I was actually about to ask. I was about to go there. So in my day job, what I work with is unstructured data. So MongoDB is the kind of technology that I had on my mind. So when you're in SQL land, relational database land, and you're working with structured data, like the CSV files and all that you're just mentioning, what do you do when you do need to pull in different types of data that's not necessarily structured data?
It requires a little bit of thought of how the format you're going to pull that in, but you could do something like with MongoDB, when I read in a table, there was an identifier that said this is the type of record that it is, and then I could have logic in the SSIS package that said, oh, well, you are a invoice type record, so I'm going to send you over to this branch of logic to update the invoice table, and oh, now this particular item is a sales contact, so I can push you over here and so forth. So it's just a matter of once you figure out how to read the source, you can then put any kind of logic in there you want that says, here's how to handle this particular record type.
Gotcha. So have you seen, have there been any trends in databases, either, in the SQL side proper or outside that you've seen over the past, few years or so that are interesting to talk about?
One of the new features that came out with SQL 2012 was called the SQL Server Analysis Services Tabular Data Model. And with, I guess you'll call it traditional analysis services, it stored everything on disk. It was called multidimensional mode. And it's still very useful. The model for it is it needs some pretty fast hard disk space. Well, with all this new in-memory technology, they've now come up with a different flavor of analysis services. It stores everything in memory. So it doesn't require very fast hard disk. It just requires lots and lots of RAM. But the queries that you can write off of this thing are blazingly fast. It can churn through and get you totals and aggregates and sums and averages in just about any way you want them, and because it's all in RAM, it's virtually instant. I mean, just super, super fast. And so I'm seeing companies start to adapt it. The one thing, we're kind of in a odd spot right now because, I'm sure your listeners all know, whenever we're talking about hardware, typically these are associated with 3 to 5 year leases. Well, for all the people who've bought SQL servers, early on in that time cycle, they're probably architected for lots of disk, fast disk, but maybe not a huge amount of RAM. So
that makes sense.
As we transition into the new servers and people start going, well, we think this tabular technology is pretty cool, so when we lease our new servers, we're going to get them with lots of memory and maybe not quite as fast a disk. I think we're going to see tabular adoption start to take off. The other beautiful thing about tabular is it is not only fast to process, it's also fast to develop in. I can stand up a good size tabular model in just a couple hours, and it's something that might take 2 or 3 days in traditional analysis services.
So that is pretty interesting. So have you? Is there a similar change in the styles and the uses of different types of databases that that cloud resources have affected?
There is, as we're pushing more data into the cloud, we're seeing people are starting to store things in either SQL Azure, or I tell you, the really hot commodity right now in the big data world is it's parallel data warehouse. I think they've now called it APS. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but most people
I
probably
think you're
heard
right.
of this
I was
parallel
actually,
data warehouse.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is APS.
Yeah, that's appliance something something, and I'm blanking on the name right now. But it is, definitely big iron. It has the capacity to store billions of records. It's one of the things our company specializes in, and we've got guys out there who are regularly working with, billion and even trillion row databases and being able to process lots of reads. And it's very memory intensive. The average server, we're talking, 128 gigs, 256 gigs of RAM. And the other beautiful thing I like about it is Microsoft recognized that not all data is structured. So they are working very closely with, I think Microsoft's version is called HD Insight, but it's a flavor of Hadoop.
Right.
And so you can actually, using PDW, write queries that go across both the SQL Server relational tables and the Hadoop and bring all of that back as a one return query.
How does Hadoop work? Is it unstructured data?
Yes, it's very similar to MongoDB.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I the context under which I'd heard of APS was trying to relate to how it worked with Hadoop and unstructured data, and that's a pretty interesting topic that I've been looking at a little bit, just because it falls right in line with my day job. So now I know, let's switch a little bit. I know that you've got an event coming up here next month that we wanted to talk about. So SQL Saturday, I think it's SQL Saturday 328. Have you participated or run one of these events before?
I have. This is our third one in Birmingham, and I've been basically running the speaker committee for all of these events, part of the board that helps put them on. Our leader is a great guy named John Baldwin. He's our club president and also leads up the SQL Server team and for the SQL Saturday event. And so it's just a great community. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have probably heard of these things before. It's generally free. I think we're charging like $10 just to help cover lunch, and that lets us keep the event small. And you come in, and you even have the option, if you want to attend but go out and get your own lunch, you're certainly welcome to do that, at which point there's no cost. And we've got several sponsors coming in to help out. We've got all kinds of speakers, and there's been a huge adoption lately of PowerShell in the SQL Server community. And so as a recognition of that, more and more SQL Saturdays are devoting tracks entirely to PowerShell, and we have chosen to do that. We've got some great speakers coming in to help out with that. Jim Christopher is going to be there. You guys know him as Beefarino.
Oh, yeah, we know Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Friend of the show, you could say.
Mike Robbins said he's going to be there.
Mike Robbins is going to be there. So I'm going to wind up doing a session during the day. We also have, and I know I'm going to butcher up his name, John Bolineau. I've not met him, but he's doing an intro to PowerShell for DBAs. And we have another person, Cody Gross, who's coming in to do something for SharePoint people, PowerShell for SharePoint.
I wish I could go talk about DSC, but that's
nice lineup.
That's a day after my anniversary.
Oh. Well, I'll give you my session if you want. So Mike's given 2 sessions, so it's looks like a really good day. Lots of good. If you're just interested in PowerShell, you can come spend the whole day doing nothing but PowerShell. If you're interested in SQL Server, we've got many tracks on that, and we've even got a track targeted toward professional development for learning things about how to manage a technical team, how to deliver technical presentations, how to ramp up your resume. So there's really something for everybody. If, maybe you're a couple who, one person is into the tech, but the other person, is just like a business person. Well, that business person could still come and spend the whole day in the professional development track and still get a lot out of it. So lots of things for everybody.
Wow.
We really tried to target this to a wide audience.
I haven't heard of SQL Saturdays doing a professional development track. Is that relatively new? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a recognition that as technical people, the technical people that can provide the most value are the ones that can speak business. It's always been a huge problem with, getting business people and IT people talking to each other in a language both of them can understand. And so the IT people who are really successful are the ones who understand the business and can speak the language of business. And so professional development tracks are all about helping people to either get those jobs, to transition beyond somebody who's just got a job into becoming a true professional.
Yeah, and that is interesting because I just like Jonathan, I didn't know that was happening at SQL Saturdays, and that's kind of an interesting trend to hear. And I noticed when checking out, just Googling your name briefly, I saw that you had spoken at Codestock before, and
I have.
And Codestock is a really cool show. Do you want to tell people kind of how that went and what your experience was there? And the reason I brought it up now was just because the professional development stuff, that was the first show that I had gone to where I saw, a track related to that.
Yeah, Codestock was in Knoxville, and unfortunately I haven't been able to go the last couple of years, but I went for the first 2 or 3 years they had it, and it was an interesting event because it actually crossed over boundaries. A lot of events you go to are very focused, like a SQL Saturday, SQL Server. You might have a .NET code camp, but this was very open in that it actually crossed, across open source and .NET and different types of databases. And as you said, professional development to give a more holistic experience that would let you go out and check things out that maybe, okay, I want to attend 4 of the sessions are going to be .NET or what have you, but I'm going to go see this Java session too, just to see what the kids on the other side of the train tracks are doing. And so It was a really good event for folks like that.
Yeah, I want to definitely encourage people that look around for events like this. And I mean, if you're in the Southeast, then obviously, going to Birmingham or to Knoxville, something is a pretty not a hard prospect. But not every area is going to have the same palette to choose from.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that we feel lucky about being in Birmingham is that we're 3 hours from Atlanta, we're 3 hours from Nashville, a couple hours from Mississippi, a couple hours from the Gulf. So we're nicely centrally located. So it's a really good venue for doing these types of events.
That makes sense. I didn't think about it that way. So, Jonathan, what about your hometown? It's central too, right?
Well, it's central Illinois, which it's 100 miles from St. Louis. It's 250 miles from Chicago. Maybe 3 hours from Indianapolis. Kind of.
Well, it was actually in that area last year. There was a customer I had up there, and I wound up being 2 weeks in that general area. I cannot recall the name of the town, but it was a small little community, about 30,000 people, and it actually wound up being faster for me to drive from Birmingham to Illinois than it was to fly, because I would have had to fly into St. Louis and then drive a couple more hours.
Yeah, you get into central Illinois, and driving around it's boring. It's flat. unless you're like really into like corn and soybean fields.
Well, it was funny because to go from the hotel to the client site, the road literally went through a farmer's cornfield, and it was a little 1-lane road, corn stalks on either side, and I just had to laugh because here I am going through a cornfield to go see one of my clients.
Yeah, I believe it.
But
So,
anyway, for those of you interested, we're doing this event on the 23rd of August, so still plenty of time for all you listeners to come out, sign up. You can just go to either SQLSaturday.com and pick out Birmingham, or you can go to bit.ly/SQLSat328, and either link will get you there, and you can just sign up, and we'll get lots and lots of good training.
So you've
and as we
obviously
always
done.
do,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say we have the links in the show notes as well, so people do not have to
Great.
remember even the bit.ly links, as easy as those are.
So you have done a lot of you've done PowerShell training, you've done SQL Server training. What is the secret for teaching DBAs PowerShell? Because they don't think the same way as like other people, I've noticed. So what are the techniques that you use specifically when you're talking to DBAs to help them to learn PowerShell and to understand why they should even care?
Well, as for how to teach it to them, you teach it in a way that they can relate to. So if I'm demonstrating something in PowerShell, I need to relate it to the way that they do it in, say, T-SQL. So, a PowerShell variables begin with a $sign. In T-SQL, they begin with an @ sign. So all of a sudden, boom, now you've got some language that they can understand, and you just start working it from there. In T-SQL, you use begin and end. PowerShell, you use squiggly braces. And once they start to figure this out, they can realize, well, this isn't so different after all. And then for getting them to buy into it, you just have to find the what's in it for me factor to teach them, okay, here are some common tasks that you can solve with, a minimal of effort, and how you can easily craft solutions for your environment. Basically, how do you make life easier for yourself? I know for me it was, writing these modules to do the common task of reverse engineering a database with the custom fields I need. That was what was the reward for me. And so each person's going to be different, and you just kind of have to find out, what are the challenges in your environment? And that's one of the first questions you need to ask is, okay, I'm trying to teach you guys this. I may be trying to sell you something that's not an issue. So let's talk first to find out what are the issues you're trying to solve, and then figure out, okay, here's how we can best solve them. And that's what I do.
And I imagine a lot of it too is understanding what is important to to a SQL DBA. There are things that maybe somebody who knows PowerShell very well but not SQL, they're not going to use the same tools to solve the same problems. So there's probably recommendations you would have for somebody that I wouldn't say the same way, or I'd have a totally different recommendation.
Well, and it's just a matter of thinking about, for any job, there's going to be multiple ways you can do things. And so finding the best tool for that job is often tricky, because there may not be a clear winner, and then you have to go to external factors. I was at a client once where we were discussing, various tools to use, integration services, PowerShell, .NET. Well, their team understood SSIS, so even though it was kind of attractive to think about using PowerShell to solve their problem, the people there knew and understood SSIS, so that's the solution we went with. So sometimes you have to think about, what do the folks know, what are they comfortable with, but also to kind of open up that tin can a little bit to say, well, here's some other tools and some other ways to do it.
Have you found
the other thing?
That's pretty good insight.
Go ahead.
Have you found that it's gotten easier over the years? Because I remember it's actually been a while since we've had somebody on to talk specifically about SQL and PowerShell, but I know that, years ago we used to talk to, Aaron Nelson would be going to SQL Saturdays and beating the drum for PowerShell, and other people too. And, it was really like an uphill battle for him to get DBAs to even look at it. Is that still the case? Or
Yeah.
Or has that kind of turned the corner in the SQL community?
I think it's turning the corner, and I'll tell you why I think that is because at the PASS Summit this year, now for those of you who are not familiar with it, the SQL PASS Summit is the huge SQL Server event. It's international. They'll have 5,000 attendees. That gives you any idea of the scale. And this year, they've actually are doing a PowerShell pre-con in which you can come see yours truly along with two of my associates, Jason Strait and Bradley Ball. We're going to do a pre-con that's going to teach you to go from knowing nothing about PowerShell all the way through being able to use it with SQL Server. And I think granting that kind of conference to give a whole day devoted to nothing but PowerShell, I think is big recognition of the fact that PowerShell is really starting to take off in the SQL Server community. And I'm just grateful to see that kind of recognition of it. And I'm getting more and more requests and questions by SQL groups to come talk about PowerShell. It was funny, I mentioned, I think before the podcast began, that I was in Omaha, Nebraska last week, and I was there to teach one of our business intelligence boot camps. And at the end of the class, I usually open it up for, okay, we got a couple hours left on the last day. What would you like to hear about? And universally, PowerShell.
Wow.
So I wound up doing it. Yeah, it was interesting. It kind of surprised me, but I wound up doing, a couple hours on PowerShell, and they were just thrilled. Asked me all kinds of questions. I've gotten a where can I learn more follow-up email. So, yeah, I was quite pleased, and I do think it's really the acceptance of PowerShell in the community as people learn more about it and learn what it can do for them. I think it's a marketing thing. We want to learn what can it do for me, and as they learn that, they go, "Oh, hey, that's pretty cool."
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I hadn't really. It's been a while since I've heard much from the SQL/PowerShell community, so that's good news. At least I think it's good news.
Well, I would agree with you. I think the toolkit that PowerShell brings to the table is incredibly powerful. And so being able to use that in conjunction with a tool like SQL Server can really make your life easier and bring a lot of power and help solve a lot of problems. I've been in some environments where I needed to, say, pull data off the production server to set up tables or something on the test server, but they wound up with this firewalls in place so that one server cannot talk directly to the other. So the only way to solve that was to go through something like PowerShell talking to both machines at the same time. So it can be really useful for solving a lot of problems.
And what is the PowerShell support like for the modern versions of SQL Server? Because I know they got off to a rocky start in terms of PowerShell support, but again, I haven't heard SQL 2012, SQL Azure, the new versions. What's the PowerShell support like?
It's come a long way. Now it's a simple matter of doing an import module, SQL PS, and then it brings in the PowerShell provider. And then with the PowerShell provider, you can traverse it as if it were a directory structure on your hard drive.
Okay.
You can just say, oh, I want to change down to the SQL Server. Now I want to change down to this instance. Now I want to go to this database. Now I want to query for all the tables. And now for a table, I want to query all the columns. And now I want to do a invoke SQL to run a SQL command to pull back data. And I can actually query a table very easily. So it's really come a long way, and it's really gotten very easy to use for even people who aren't super familiar with it, because, again, it's just a matter of issuing like a change directory command as if you were on your file structure on your hard drive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We've maligned the provider interface at times, but I think it probably makes the most sense, if anything, for that type of SQL Server navigation that you're talking about.
Yeah, it is incredibly easy to use, much more so than the SQL Management Object Library. Now, I think the SQL Management Object Library has its place. I found that there are some things that still are not exposed through the provider, some of the really nitty-gritty details of the database, or say a column object, something like that. But if you use it in conjunction with the SQL provider and you use SMO to give that little extra edge to get those little details, they work really well hand in hand. And so knowing the SMO can just take you to the next level.
So it doesn't sound like they've gotten to the point yet from a commandlet perspective where they're abstracting away SQL commands. So you're basically just using invoke SQL command and then giving it your SQL statements?
You are, but I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if you're working with SQL, you know SQL commands are ready.
Right.
So, why reinvent all of those SQL commands in PowerShell when you can just write out the good old SQL you know and love, and then just stick it inside a here string variable and say invoke SQL command. And so,
yeah, Jonathan, that was kind of racist of you, actually.
I'm not prejudiced against DBAs.
So I think the provider now. I have found that there are some things, though. SMO does run faster in many cases than the provider, because the provider tends to be a wrapper around SMO. I have a little demo I do where I basically scan through a database looking for, I guess, all instances of a big int. And I return, and I could do that in provider, and I do it in SMO, and I do a time comparison. And typically SMO beats it by about 30%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's significant.
And depending on what you're doing, if it's something that is time intensive, then that can be worth the extra effort of going into SMO. If you're doing something where time is not really a big issue, like, I'm just issuing a single SQL command, there's really no reason to get down to the SMO level, because, hey, who cares if it takes 1 second or 1.2 seconds, So again, knowing when to apply the tool is half the battle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Mike Robbins just put in the chat room that SQL 2014 has 57 commandlets, SQL 2012 had 41 commandlets, and SQL 2008 R2 had 5 commandlets.
Yes.
But also, when you think about it, the number of the commandlets means something different if you have a comprehensive provider.
Right, that's true.
Because you are going to be using that provider for a lot of processing and a lot of different types of activities that you could do those otherwise with a set of commandlets. But if the provider is doing it right, then you don't need those commandlets.
And two, I think getting those commandlets adapted by the general users can be something of an uphill battle, especially when, as we said earlier, we're talking about the struggles getting DBAs or BI professionals to adopt PowerShell in the first place. If they can leverage a lot of the SQL knowledge they already have, then I think they're going to wind up doing that more so than trying to pick up some of these new commandlets. They're going to use PowerShell as more of a framework to be able to, say, iterate over 500 servers across their enterprise versus, say, trying to do something complex with one particular server.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Has automating the installation of SQL Server gotten appreciably better over time? Because that's something that I've had to deal with in the past, and it was a brutal process.
No.
Okay, I was afraid of that.
There's the short answer.
Yeah, I haven't experimented yet with 2014 to see what its automation is like, but the last time I tried it with, say, 2012, it still had a ways to go. But that is something I'm hoping we all see one day, is that all of the products, SharePoint, SQL, whatever, get to the point where you can automate installation using something like DSC.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that happen.
Well, and it would make I think it's going to happen with, especially with Microsoft's push towards virtualization and wanting to spin up servers quickly and easily. It would be awesome to just be able to write out your DSC script to say, I want SQL Server and SQL Server integration services installed on this machine. On this machine over here, I want analysis services and reporting services, and have those configured just out of DSC. And maybe over here, I want to spin up SharePoint, and to just have these scripts where you can just spin up a new server quickly and easily. Also to be able to provide different developers
consistently across different pieces of software. So those same skills that you applied, just now, you could do it to something else.
Absolutely. And also, I meet a lot of developers who say, well, gee, I've got to develop this ASP.NET app that integrates with SharePoint to pull data out of analysis services and writes data back to SQL Server. Help, I have no clue how to set up a server. And actually, one of the videos I did for Pluralsight walks you through the whole, okay, I'm going to set up a single machine, virtual machine that has all these different components installed, and I wound up doing that because I didn't know at the time. This was very early on, but a lot of that, the different things you had to configure, and just to get a simple development machine up and going. And so having DSC files, it would be very easy to pass these off to the developers on your team to say, oh, you're going to spin up a virtual machine inside Hyper-V on your laptop. Here's the DSC file, and here's our corporate MSDN licenses. Go to it. And all he has to do is run it, key in the license key, and away he goes.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So before we let you go, wanted to make sure that we knew where to send people who wanted to learn more. And we covered the SQL Saturday 328. What about yourself? What else do you do online?
Wow. Probably the main way to find me is either through my blog, Arcane Code, ARCANECODE.com.
Oh, I didn't know that was you. I've been on that blog before.
I went through the same conversation with him.
Yep. Yeah. So I've been blogging there for many years. I'm also Arcane Code on Twitter. You can also get me at arcanecode@gmail.com. So lots of different ways you can get a hold of me, and I'll be again, we'll be at SQL Saturday 328, and I'll also be at the PASS Summit doing the pre-con and a regular session there. Let's see, I also do, if you go out to our company, Pragmatic Works, does webinars every Tuesday and Thursday live, and we also record those. And I did actually a PowerShell webinar. I think it was in June, I think it was. But they're all recorded, and you can go watch those anytime you want.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
It's just, pragmaticworks.com, and you just go to the training section, and all these are free, no charge. And I've got 2 or 3 out there so far, and I'm doing another one in October on reporting services configuration. But we've got guys from all across, and these aren't just Pragmatic Works guys. These are guys from all across the industry who will come on and do these, graciously do these webinars for us. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, it's a really great thing we do. I'm really grateful. Our company is very big on the community. They actually give me time off to go to the PASS Summit and speak. So
that's nice.
They're very, very, very community oriented. So we do a lot of webinars and things such as this, with the community in mind.
That's awesome.
Very cool. So before we let you go, there is one question. This is something that we ask of everyone who comes on the podcast.
Oh, we have another question first. Sorry.
Oh, we do? My bad.
Mike wanted us to ask you about your chapter in the Deep Dives book. You did a chapter for that?
I did. I participated in the I've actually done 4 books, and there are 3 deep dives books, the 2 for SQL Server and the PowerShell one where the money all went to charity. And the PowerShell deep dive book, I did a chapter on using PowerShell with SQL management objects.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you want more about that, you can go pick up a copy of the deep dives book, and money goes to charity, so you can feel good about spending that money. But yeah, great.
Very
Thanks,
cool.
Mike. That's a great point.
So then the final question. Jonathan, can I ask the final question now?
Please do. It's all you, man.
Okay, excellent. So Robert, what we would like to know, what our listeners would like to know is, if you could be a superhero or have a superpower, who would it be and why?
You know, interestingly enough, this is the second time you've asked me that question.
What?
I was actually on your show once before.
Oh man,
But-
I hate when I do that.
You probably don't remember because it was in a group panel discussion at Codestock. I think it was the first one where you were doing a live group, and I was part of that group recording.
Wow.
And so,
okay, didn't
and you
know
guys went. You guys went to everybody. It was only like 6 of us, I think. But you went. You were talking about how do we use PowerShell, and you went
Oh,
as
yeah.
the final question. You went to everybody there and said, "What kind of superhero power would you have?" And my answer at the time was the ability to understand, or speak, read, write all types of languages out there. You know, having that
That's-
ability to
that's
communicate
cool.
with anybody.
Yeah, I remember that. That was when that's when I met Jim Christopher for the first time in person, and
Yeah, that's the
I want
first
to
time I
say
met
that
him,
was a
too.
World Cup year as well because we were watching games there in the Codestock lobby.
That would have been about the right time. That would have been about 4 years ago, so around 2010.
Yeah.
So that would have been about the right time.
Very cool. Well, I'm
So do
glad
you have a
that we
different?
had you.
Do you have a different answer now, for the record?
Maybe being a Time Lord would be pretty cool. I could really use a TARDIS at times.
Yeah, I agree with that one. That's a good one. And strangely, we've not had too many.
No,
Doctor
we
Who-
haven't.
Have we had any?
No,
Surely we have.
I don't think we have. I may
Wow.
be wrong, but I don't think we have.
Well,
Well,
as
then you're
superpowers
Doctor
go,
number.
that would
You're
be
the first
pretty epic.
Doctor.
Awesome.
You're Doctor number 1.
I'm just eagerly awaiting the new season of Doctor Who, which actually I think premieres the same day as our sequel Saturday.
Oh,
I
well,
think
that'll be a
August
good day then,
23rd, I think. Yeah,
for multiple reasons.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Robert, want to thank you for coming on and spending time with us. And it
this
was
is
really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has. It's fun. Let's do it again sometime soon.
We will have to do that.
Yeah, it's been too long since we've had a DBA on.
Yeah, we
Actually,
definitely have to do that every once.
I've never been a DBA, to be honest. I'm actually a business intelligence guy. So I was a software developer, and I moved into the BI realm, which is kind of unusual. Most people come there from being a DBA, but DBA is the one job I've never had. I obviously have to learn a lot about the databases, but I deal more on the BI side of the house.
Have
So
you?
SQL Server is kind of schizophrenic. It's got the DBA side and the BI side, and they're almost like two separate products at times.
Do you do much with education with BI?
I have not, but I know it gets a lot of traction. I do a lot of my clients are either in the insurance industry or the power industry is where a lot of my stuff, or healthcare, and those are the three big ones for me. And then of course we've got people doing education in all kinds of different clients across the board. But I seem to do a lot with various power companies.
I have a brother who works for Purdue University who is involved in their in BI and has been for years. He speaks different places in the country about BI and education.
Yeah, my sister works for one of the school systems up there in Atlanta. I think it's Cherokee County.
Oh,
and so
that's where we are.
That's us.
Yep. So she
Which
she
school
lives
do you
up there,
know?
and so she's been. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go ask her. I just know it's that county, but she is actually taps my brain every so often for either PowerShell or BI help.
Neat.
So apparently she's been learning some PowerShell too. Yeah, I'm lucky in that I don't have, when I go visit family for holidays, I don't have to fix their computers. My dad used to be a CIO. My brother-in-law was one of the original WordPress developers, and his wife, my sister, does a lot with the computers. So, I'm pretty fortunate.
Wait.
I've got a very IT-oriented family.
The WordPress developer, is he in Cherokee County?
Yeah, Dougal.
Yeah. Yep, I know who he is.
Okay,
That's funny.
small world.
Yeah, I don't know if I've met him. I don't think I've met him, but I remember interacting with him a little bit on Twitter or whatever, and then I used WordPress a lot for a while there, and I know that there was one who was in Woodstock. So funny.
That's
Small
him.
world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very cool. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks again, Robert. Been a lot of fun.
Sure.
And very good discussions. And like Jonathan said, it's good for us to get SQL injection now and then.
Absolutely.
Wait, that was
glad to do it.
Wait, no. Not really.
Come to the dark side. We have cookies.
Cool. And thanks a lot, Mike, in the chat room with the links.
Thanks, Mike.
And for suggesting you come on the show, too, for that matter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's always good to get to expose yourself, so to speak. And I came in last night when we thought you were going to have another show, and dropped into the chat room, and there were I don't know, about a dozen guys in there, and we all chatted for a while until we were last night. So had a good time chatting for a while.
And that was funny that that I saw you 4 years ago at Codestock, and I didn't realize that until just now. But I totally remember when I had everybody. We did like a little ad hoc thing. That was neat. Neat that you remembered it too for that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, that's
good stuff.
Yeah, I love it when you guys come out and do the live podcast, because they really draw a big crowd, and I think it helps identify to the world, hey, PowerShell stuff's happening, it's coming on, it's getting interest, people are attending. This is a tool you should be looking at.
Yeah, those are fun to do. Alrighty. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you again next time, Robert.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, good show. What are we talking about in the chat room?
A guy.
A guy with no name? With an odd avatar.
He's a new PowerShell MVP.
I did not know that. Youngest Czech PowerShell MVP.
Yeah.
Was he the youngest PowerShell MVP? Is he the youngest MVP, youngest PowerShell MVP, or youngest Czech PowerShell MVP?
Yeah, his blog is like, probably has his name in it somehow.
I got the MVP. That's a blog post.
Maybe it's on his Hello World. Have you got a name? Do you have a name?
Let's see.
Using my apps from PowerShell. MAH.
Oh, righty then.
So no, Joel. I don't know. I'm looking.
The answer is no.
Do you want to be on when I talk about the file, that whole PowerShell DSC thing? We had that question on Twitter about, or I can just record it on my own. I'm not sure what that person wants to
you're
know.
going to reply to that guy that way? That's cool.
I guess. I mean, I don't...
That's a good way to do it. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I do remember that there was a question.
Yeah, I think it was a question. Let me see if I can find it.
I would have to look back in Twitter a ways.
Yeah, it says, you once mentioned deploying an RDS farm using DSC and issues with installation, product IDs, etc. And
I could ask it of you.
Okay, sure.
Hold on, now I got to find it.
It's IT engineer jobs.
Oh yeah, I see it. Thank you. All right. You want to mention? Okay. So, Jonathan, we had a question from the Twitters. I wanted to read to you and have you answer it if you would. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Excellent. So this one is from Let's see, the handle is IT at IT Engineer Jobs. And the question is, you once mentioned deploying an RDS farm using DSC and issues that you had with installation, product ID. And so why don't you go into what you've been doing there, Jonathan?
Yeah, that actually it ended up being kind of a mess because there were a bunch of different applications that had to be installed on these servers, and they weren't all MSIs, they weren't all well written, they weren't all modern in most sense.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the one that I think surprised me the most was SAP GUI. And it turns out that SAP GUI, you do the installation and it has kind of its own installation mechanism, and it does not have a product ID that I could find. And,
I do remember us talking about this now.
Yeah, and one of the things that the package resource requires and relies on, it relies on to tell whether or not it installed successfully, is the product ID. And the other thing is the name as it appears in the registry, as far as I can tell, in, what is it, HKey local machine, Microsoft Windows current version uninstall, underneath there where it gets laid down. So what I ended up having to do for that particular case, because it has its own installation mechanism, it even has the ability to add stuff into the install, and you can drop registry keys.
Oh,
so what I did is I just went to PowerShell and generated a GUID and created a registry key in the uninstall for SAP, or for SAP GUI, so that when it did the installation, it would pop that registry key in there and fool DSC into thinking it had installed successfully.
So you fixed it for you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Not ideal, because if I ever had to do, ensure that it was not present, it would probably fail to uninstall, because it would go look in my fake key and it wouldn't find an uninstall string. So another way you could do it, or what I should have done had that been something that I was concerned about, would be to pop another key in there that had a valid uninstall string to be able to pull that application back out. So that is one trick that I've used. I mean, the main things that you really need are the product ID and that name. And usually the way I do it is I'll run a script to pull that information out of the uninstall section of the registry, and just so you'd have the name and the product ID, because that's really what it's looking for. And if you can't do that, you can also, there's tools that you can use to to kind of break open MSIs to pull that information out. There's a free one called, what is it called? There's a Microsoft tool, and then there's another tool. Let's see, MSI. It's like an MST creator. One of the things it can do is create MSTs. That's kind of what it's for. And I'm trying to remember, what is that thing called? Orca is one. It's not. I keep wanting to say alternative. It's not alternative.
You got me here, man. I don't know this tool you're talking about.
Alternative.
Would love to help out.
To Orca. Instead. INSTEDIT, instead it.
Oh, okay.
So that's another tool that you can use to break open an MSI and get that information out, if you need to do it that way. Sometimes it may not be practical to have the application installed to pull the data out, so you have to go against the MSI or the MST itself, and that's a tool that I've used to do that. That's a free tool. And there's also, if you have, some kind of package creation software, if you have Install Shield or something, you could obviously use that. But if you don't, because it's very expensive, instead it is also useful for that. And so
Gotcha.
that's the key thing for the package resource that it is kind of looking for, is that information in the registry. So if the installation that you have and you need to automate does not provide that information in the registry, and you can provide it via some alternate means, that also works. If you can repackage it and add that information, or if you can, that's one way to do it.
Cool. Well, that's a good tip.
So hopefully
Thank you,
that
Jonathan.
answers your question.
Awesome.
Yeah, I still don't know who that person is, but that's okay. Oh, they must listen.
That's cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Get
All right,
pretty tired
thanks,
on
man.
this end. Yep, good show. Talk to you later.
Yep. Good night,
Good night
everybody.
to everybody in the chat room.